you better uncross them, you're choking yourself. That's what I call peanut butter legs. Brown, smooth, and easy to spread.
We were the most sampled entertainers. Most people sampled us than they did anybody.
Did you know Rudy Ray Moore, the legendary comedian and actor, had a heartbreaking secret he kept until his death? What could be so painful that he never shared it with the world?
I knew him before he ever had a record.
Oh, when he was in Long Beach?
Los Angeles.
How did this secret impact his life and legacy? Let's uncover the truth behind this sad story. His job was to entertain soldiers and lift their spirits.
Dolomite is my name, and up is my game.
Rudy Ray Moore was a man who changed the world of entertainment. He started as a singer, but became so much more. He brought comedy, music, and movies together in a way that inspired Black entertainers and influenced hip-hop.
I'm not here to brag, nor here to boast. I can sit on a tombstone.
Moore was born in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and grew up in a place called the Johnson House. Life in his small hometown taught him many lessons, but he wanted more. He eventually left Arkansas, living in Akron, Ohio, and later in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In these cities, Moore worked in local clubs, where he sang, danced, and even preached in churches. Performing became his passion, and he loved entertaining people. In Milwaukee, Moore kept busy by performing in nightclubs. He created a character called Prince DuMarr for his act, using his natural talent to make people laugh and have a good time. Whether it was through jokes, singing, or dancing, Moore knew how to keep an audience entertained. He worked hard to improve and always looked for new ways to make his performances exciting.
Got your legs crossed, you better uncross them, you're choking yourself. That's what I call peanut butter legs. Brown, smooth, and easy to spread.
Moore later joined the U.S. Army and was part of an entertainment unit. His job was to entertain soldiers and lift their spirits. While serving in Germany, he earned the nickname Harlem Hillbilly because he mixed country music with rhythm and blues, R&B. His fresh take on traditional music made people enjoy his performances even more. During this time, Moore's love for comedy grew. One day while singing for soldiers, he started adding jokes to his performance. The crowd loved it. This success encouraged him to take comedy more seriously, and he began honing his skills as a comedian. After leaving the Army with an honorable discharge, Moore came back to the United States to continue his entertainment career. He first moved to Seattle, Washington, and then to Los Angeles, California. In Los Angeles, he performed in clubs, combining comedy and music to entertain audiences.
I knew him before he ever had a record.
Oh, when he was in Long Beach?
Los Angeles.
It was in Los Angeles that record producer Dootsie Williams noticed Moore's talent. Williams helped Moore start recording rhythm and blues songs with several record labels. These included Federal, Cash, Ball, Kent, and Imperial. Moore's energetic style and unique voice stood out, and he released many songs. As Moore's career grew, he started making comedy albums. This shift became the turning point of his career. His comedy was bold and different, and it caught the attention of many people. These albums eventually made him a star in the world of comedy. Did you know that Rudy Ray Moore's life changed forever because of a character called Delomite? It all started at Dolphins of Hollywood, a famous record store in Los Angeles. Moore worked there and often heard wild, funny, and dirty stories from a man named Rico. Rico wasn't a comedian or actor. He was just a guy who loved telling crazy tales about a character he called Dolomite. Rico would stand in the store, sharing his stories full of wild language and adult jokes. He attracted crowds because his storytelling was so outrageous and funny. People would laugh so hard they cried. Rudy Ray Moore saw something special in Rico's stories. He thought, what if I turn these stories into something bigger? To make it happen, Moore invited Rico to his home. He gave him drinks and some marijuana to relax, then recorded him telling the Dolomite stories on tape. Listening to those tapes, Moore decided to turn Dolomite into a character he could perform. He added his own twist, style, and humor to make it even better. When Moore started performing as Dolomite in his comedy act, audiences went crazy for it. They loved how bold, funny, and over-the-top it was. Moore didn't stop there. He recorded 3 comedy albums based on the Delomite character. Eat Out More Often, This Belongs to Me, and The Dirty Dozens. He mixed his storytelling with jazz and R&B music, giving the albums a unique vibe. The topics were edgy, talking about pimps, hustlers, and street life, and the language was raw. Mainstream stores wouldn't sell them because they were too risky, but black communities loved the albums. They became a huge hit because they were honest, funny, and completely different from what was considered normal at the time.
We were the most sampled entertainers. Most people sampled us than they did anybody.
Rudy Ray Moore's inspiration didn't only come from Rico. He was also influenced by comedians like Foxx and Richard Pryor, who were famous for breaking the rules of comedy. Moore also used ideas from the Dozens, a tradition in black culture where people joke and insult each other in creative rhymes. To make his recording sound lively, he invited friends to his apartment during tapings. Their laughter and cheers made it feel like a real party. But Rudy Ray Moore didn't just want Delomite to be a character on stage. He wanted to bring him to life in a movie. Moore spent almost all his money to make the movie Delomite. Filming started in January 1974, and by April 1975, the movie was released across the US. It became one of the most popular Blaxploitation movies, a genre of films made for black audiences in the 1970s. These movies featured strong black characters dealing with tough situations, and Delomite was no exception.
Me past, supposed to have to be pulling these hush puppies out your m***ing ass.
In the movie, Moore played the character Delomite, who was loved by many as the ultimate hero from the ghetto. Delomite was tough, funny, and always ready to protect his community from bad guys. He was dressed sharp, had quick wit, and was also skilled in kung fu. To add to his unique style, Delomite was a pimp who had a team of women who could also fight to defend him. The character was known for his strength, charm, and fierce protection of his neighborhood. For a lot of fans, he was the perfect mix of action and comedy, showing both his toughness and his humor. When Delomite became popular, Moore didn't stop. He followed up with other movies including The Human Tornado, The Monkey Hustle, and Petey Wheatstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law. His fans loved his wild and fearless style, which he continued to show in his music and comedy albums.
I said, your drawers may be clean and trimmed and laced, but you ain't gonna never set your ass in this boy's face.
Moore's jokes and stories were full of life, but they were also very explicit, meaning he used a lot of strong language and adult themes. Because of this, Moore wasn't seen much on regular TV shows or in big Hollywood films. Unlike some other black comedians like Foxx or Richard Pryor, who also told edgy jokes, Moore's style was too raw for most mainstream audiences. Back then, it was not easy for black performers to get big roles or control their own projects, but Moore was determined to make his own way. Moore didn't wait around for anyone to give him a chance. Instead, he recorded his own comedy albums and sold them secretly while working at his day job. He wasn't allowed to sell them publicly because the comedy was very raw and different from what was usually heard on the radio or in stores. But people loved it, and Moore made enough money from these albums to fund a movie he wanted to make. A movie Hollywood wouldn't have backed.
Another frame up.
That's right.
Moore spent most of his earnings from the records to finance the movie Delomite, which started filming. It was released and distributed nationally later on, and has been described as one of the great blaxploitation movies of the 1970s. The character was the ultimate ghetto hero, a bad dude, profane, skilled at kung fu, dressed to kill and hell-bent on protecting the community from evil menaces. He was a pimp with a kung fu fighting clique of prostitutes, and he was known for his sexual prowess. While many people cheered his work, some critics felt that his movies reinforced negative stereotypes about black culture. Let's look at both sides to understand why Moore's films were both celebrated and criticized. Now, in the 70s, Hollywood was mostly run by white directors, actors, and producers. There weren't many roles for black actors, and when they did get roles, they often played small parts or stereotypical characters. Rudy Ray Moore and other blaxploitation filmmakers decided to change that. They created movies with black heroes who were strong, confident, and brave, showing a side of black life that wasn't often seen on the screen. Fans loved Moore's character Delomite because he was tough, funny, and took on the bad guys. He didn't care about fitting into mainstream expectations and didn't back down. For many black audiences, seeing Delomite fight against corruption and unfair treatment felt empowering. Moore was able to make audiences laugh while also making them feel proud. For people who had long felt left out of Hollywood stories, Moore's films offered something new and exciting. However, Moore's movies weren't loved by everyone. Some critics believed his films played into stereotypes that showed black people in a negative light. They worried that characters like Delomite, a flashy pimp and street hustler, were only adding to old stereotypes that already hurt black communities. These critics argued that instead of breaking down stereotypes, Moore's movies might actually make them stronger by making certain behaviors seem normal or funny. Moore didn't let the criticism bother him. He argued that his movies were meant to be fun and exaggerated, not realistic. To him, Delomite was a character created to entertain, not to teach a lesson. Moore explained that he drew inspiration from old storytelling traditions where characters were bigger than life, bold, loud, and impossible to ignore. He believed that audiences understood that his characters were meant to be extreme and didn't represent all black people.
Me past, supposed to have to be pulling these hush puppies out your motherfucking ass.
Moore saw his films as a way of showing a certain kind of urban black experience, with characters who were clever, street smart, and ready to fight back against unfair treatment. He wanted his characters to be memorable and make people laugh, while also showing strength in the face of obstacles. In his view, his films were about pride and confidence, not about creating negative images. Moore went on to make several Delomite films after the first one was so successful. Indeed, Moore's first Delomite cost him $100,000 to make, and it ultimately made $12 million at the box office. Today, Blaxploitation films like Delomite have a special place in film history. Was Rudy Ray Moore gay? Outside of his character, Rudy was a much quieter, private person, and he kept his personal life to himself. Over the years, some close friends and people who worked with Rudy have suggested that he might have been bisexual or even gay. This wasn't something Rudy talked about, and back in the 1970s and 1980s, the entertainment world was not very open about these kinds of topics. If a public figure admitted to being gay or bisexual back then, it could hurt their career or make fans see them differently. So if Rudy was indeed bisexual or gay, he probably felt he couldn't share this part of his life publicly. Many people believe that Rudy created the Delomite character as a way to hide his true self. By playing a character who was so obviously macho and straight, he could keep people from asking questions about his personal life. While Rudy kept his romantic life a secret, Delomite was openly chasing women all the time. The Delomite character gave Rudy a way to build a barrier between himself and the public, a way to keep his private life private. It allowed him to become a star without letting anyone know the real Rudy Ray Moore. But because of this, fans are left wondering about who he truly was as a person. Moore never married. Entertainer Stanton Z. LaVey, a friend of Moore's, said in 2019 that Moore was very much bisexual, if not gay, and that his Delomite persona helped cover it up. Even though rumors about his sexuality have been around for a while, there is no solid proof, and it's hard to say for sure what Rudy's true orientation was. In those days, the industry wasn't supportive of LGBTQ+ individuals, especially not black men. The pressure to hide one's true identity was strong, and many felt they had no choice but to stay in the closet. This made people wonder even more about Rudy's life.
I didn't even care, because I was the same thing he was, so whatever they just said about him, naturally fell on me too, so.
Right.
His routines and vulgarity earned him a cult following.
Got your legs crossed, you better uncross them, you're choking yourself. That's what I call peanut butter legs, brown, smooth, and easy to spread.
Rudy Ray Moore wasn't like other comedians. He didn't shy away from strong language or adult themes. Instead, he made them a big part of his act. This bold style set him apart and gave him a loyal fan base. While some people loved his work, others found it too vulgar. But that's exactly what made Moore special. He wasn't trying to please everyone. He focused on people who liked his raw and edgy humor. Moore became famous through his comedy albums. These weren't your typical clean jokes. They were full of raunchy humor and street-style storytelling. His characters came from real-life experiences in the ghetto, and they didn't hold back on language. Some people said his work was too dirty and criticized him for it. Moore didn't let this bother him. He saw it as part of his art. He once said, "I wasn't saying dirty words just to say them. It was a form of art. I created ghetto characters who cursed." He wanted people to see him as a storyteller, a ghetto expressionist, not just a comedian using bad language. Even though his comedy was bold, Moore had another side. He often spoke at his church and even took his mother to religious events like the National Baptist Convention. This balance showed that Moore wasn't just about shock value. He understood his roots and stayed connected to them. What made Moore even more important was his influence on music, especially rap. In the 1980s and 1990s, rap music started to use strong language and talk about life in the streets, much like Moore's comedy. Rappers like 2 Live Crew and Snoop Dogg openly said that Moore inspired them. Snoop Dogg even said, "Without Rudy Ray Moore, there would be no Snoop Dogg, and that's for real." Moore's work showed that it was okay to push boundaries and be raw. He proved that strong language and bold themes could tell powerful stories. This idea became a big part of rap music. Rappers learned from Moore that they could mix humor, storytelling, and real talk to connect with their audiences. People who wanted something real and unapologetic found a hero in Rudy Ray Moore. His routines and raw style earned him a special place in comedy and music history.
Couldn't get in. In the 70s, there was a little period called the Blaxploitation era where they was doing all these different types of movies. And he couldn't get in with them. They were like, "Nah, we don't want to work with you." It's like, I can't even make a Blaxploitation movie? It was like, no. So he had to go back door and get his own stuff made. And he became like a little hero of mine. He was like this guerrilla filmmaker from the 70s.
Also, back in the early 2000s, writer Scott Alexander had a big idea about making a movie about Rudy Ray Moore, a famous African-American comedian and actor. But strangely enough, they didn't come up with the idea themselves. It was actually Eddie Murphy who brought it to them. In around 2003, Eddie Murphy reached out and asked to meet with them. He was a huge fan of their movie Ed Wood, and during the meeting, he started quoting lines from the film. At one point, Murphy asked, "Do you guys know who Rudy Ray Moore is?" Both writers immediately knew who Moore was, and it was like a light bulb went off in their heads. Karaszewski said it felt like the perfect idea. Eddie Murphy playing Rudy Ray Moore? It just made so much sense. The writers even got a chance to meet Rudy Ray Moore himself. At the time, Moore was in his 70s, and he had a lot to say about his long and difficult career in entertainment. He had worked hard and wanted a movie to tell his story and give him the recognition he deserved. But despite their best efforts, no studio was willing to make the movie.
He couldn't get in with them. They were like, "Nah, we don't want to work with you." It's like, I can't even make a Blaxploitation movie? It was like, no. So he had to go back door and get his own stuff made. And he became like a little hero of mine. He was like this guerrilla filmmaker from the 70s.
Karaszewski said sometimes, no matter how good an idea is, it's hard to get anyone to agree to it. So the years went by, and Rudy Ray Moore passed away in 2008 at the age of 81. The writers felt bad because they had promised Moore that they would make a movie about him, but it never happened. However, Karaszewski didn't give up on Moore's story. In fact, after Moore died, he held a tribute screening for Delomite, one of Moore's most famous movies. It was packed, and they even had a discussion on stage with people who worked on the film. By that time, though, the writers had moved on to other projects. They thought someone else would eventually make the movie about Rudy Ray Moore. They figured their idea had slipped away. But things changed in 2016. After the huge success of The People vs. O.J. Simpson, a TV series that Alexander and Karaszewski worked on, suddenly found themselves in a good position to make their passion projects happen. The series won an Emmy Award and many other accolades. Now, with some influence in Hollywood, they decided to try again to make the Rudy Ray Moore movie happen. They contacted Eddie Murphy and asked if he would still be interested in the project. A week later, they were at Netflix pitching the idea, and the streaming service loved it. The project moved quickly, and soon Dolomite Is My Name, the movie about Rudy Ray Moore, was born. It turned out to be a huge hit, and Eddie Murphy received great praise for his role as Moore. Looking back, Alexander and Karaszewski were glad they didn't give up on the idea. It wasn't easy to get the movie made, but in the end, it was a success and helped bring Rudy Ray Moore the recognition he deserved. Today, Rudy Ray Moore is remembered as a pioneer who wasn't afraid to take risks. His comedy and films are still celebrated by fans who appreciate his courage to be different. Ray Moore didn't slow down in his later years. Even as he got older, he stayed active in the entertainment world, connecting with both old fans and a new generation. In 1990, Moore worked with Big Daddy Kane on the album Taste of Chocolate. He also appeared in the music video for Eric B. and Rakim's song In the Ghetto. This wasn't a one-time thing. Moore was just getting started with his involvement in the music scene. 4 years later, in 1994, he was featured on Method Man's album Tykel and 2 Live Crew's Back at Your Ass for the 9/4. The 2 Live Crew even said Moore's bold style of using strong language inspired their work. Moore's talents weren't limited to music. He made a guest appearance on the hit TV show Martin in an episode called The Players Came Home. Fans loved seeing him on television again, bringing his humor and charm. He also revived his famous Delomite character for music videos. He appeared in videos for Busta Rhymes' album When Disaster Strikes and Snoop Dogg's No Limit Top Dog. In another fun moment, Moore was digitally added into Old Dirty Bastard's music video for the song Got Your Money.
Pretty girls.
In 2000, Moore brought Delomite back again for a movie called Big Money Hustless, created by the rap group Insane Clown Posse. It was a funny and creative film that let Moore's character shine in a new way. The next year, in 2001, he appeared on Busta Rhymes' album Genesis. He showed that he could stay relevant and connect with younger audiences. Moore wasn't done yet. In 2005, he tried something new by lending his voice to an animated show called Sons of Butcher. He played 2 characters, Rudy and Joseph, during season 2 of the show. Then in 2008, he recorded a song called I Live for the Funk with Blowfly and Daniel Jordan. This song was special because it celebrated 30 years since Moore's movie Petey Wheatstraw. Sadly, it would be his last recording before he passed away. Rudy Ray Moore's later years were full of creativity and energy. Whether it was music, television, or movies, he found ways to stay involved and keep his legacy alive. Fans appreciated how he kept pushing boundaries and sharing his talent, even as he grew older.